Happy 2024, everybody. It is a new day. It is a new dawn. It's a new year. So this is my first book review of 2024. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Samoki Dude, and today I am covering the third book of the Gentleman Bastards, that is The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. I covered Liza Locke Lamora back in April, I think, and then I covered Red Sea Under Red Skies in either July or August. I can't quite remember at the moment. But now I finally got to the Republic of Thieves, read it in November, completed it in December. I got some thoughts, people. So the biggest strength I've noticed when reading the Gentleman Bastards book is that Scott Lynch has he has a gift of turning his characters' strengths into weaknesses. You may have heard me talk about it in my Lies of Locke Lamora review, and you may have even seen me mention it a couple times in the Red Sea Under Red Sky review. I remember a piece of advice I heard about writing thrillers from a few years back. It was actually a video I was watching, either about Ozark or Breaking Bad. I don't quite remember what show it was, but I remember it was a show. The advice, anyway, was when your characters are under the gun, twist. Then twist some more after that, and then see how your characters are going to get out of it. Scott Lynch has proven in the Lies of Locke Lamora and Red Seas Under Red Skies that he is truly talented when it comes to this concept. I mean, that's really the appeal of these books. What crazy stunt is Locke and John going to get into this time, and how the hell are they going to get out of it? Until it wasn't. So, The Republic of Thieves is not a complete dumpster fire. I mean, I did mention it in my most disappointing books of 2024. I should note that the first 100 pages are pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty good story, it's a pretty good start. I mean, we really see Locke and John recuperating after the events of the last book. Locke is really going through a tough time because of stuff that happened in the previous book that I won't get into. They're about 100 pages into the story. Lynch decides, for the most ass-backward reason, to drop the most blatant Deus Ex Machina I have ever seen in my life. It just, if you guys remember, the people who I was talking to about this book precisely when I got to that part, I should note this. This moment in this book completely torpedoes any of the tension that was going on from the previous book. It is also so blatantly lazy. I can't even fathom that he thought this was a good idea. I usually don't get angry at books. I try to keep my emotions in check when it comes to books. I mean, now, of course, I think when a book now, I understand that books are about connecting with people, and there are books that have connected with me on an emotional level. But it is quite rare for me to get angry at such clumsy storytelling. But I have to say, this book here really angered me with such blatantly clumsy writing. I can't even go into detail because it's spoilery. But basically, it's basically like if in Blood Meridian at the end of the story when Judge Holden is naked dancing on the freaking table, it turns out the kid was somehow alive and just shot him and dead, and that's the end of the story. It's like that. It's basically like that. Completely torpedoes any of the tension about how the hell Jean and Locke are going to get out of this. And that's the freaking appeal of this series, is how are Locke and Jean going to get out of a situation that they've gotten themselves into? Because again, like I said, Lynch really likes to turn their strengths into weaknesses. In this, it's literally just magical healing. I can't fathom what Scott Lynch was thinking when he wrote that. And I can't even believe that not only did he think that was a good idea, but that this actually went through the process. Like, his editors were like, yeah, great. People won't get pissed off at all. Because, they're fucking idiots. Oh, God. I can't even just... And the sad part is that this book never even really recovers, because I don't give a shit about what's going to happen now. I mean, Locke is basically what happened in the second book, what made the ending of that book so great. That's basically gone now. And I stopped caring at that moment. And it's very rare for me to get taken out of a book in such a manner. I sound like Jason here. But it's just... oh, God. Okay. Rant. I'm getting a little too ranty here. I did hear that Scott Lynch was struggling with mental health when he was writing this book. And he was going through a particularly difficult divorce with his first wife. It shows. It definitely shows. It feels like Lynch's heart was not in it when he was writing this book. I mean, there's a lot of just... and it just shows. The Republic of Thieves just feels unfocused. It's constantly introducing new things to try and induce tension after he so kindly deflated it in that scene that I mentioned earlier, because there's almost a part of me that thinks that Lynch was kind of just wrote himself into a corner, and then he just kind of threw other stuff out there. I mean, first we get the mentioned Deus Ex Machina. Then we get the tension and the romance between Locke and his love interest, Sabetha, which actually wasn't bad. Then we learn about bits of Locke's past, which gets really tropey, which is also disappointing, because another thing I liked about the Gentleman Bastard series is that there's no chosen ones, there's none of this, epic fantasy stuff. It feels like people just going on with their lives. And yes, Locke and John are master thieves, and they definitely have a pretty large effect on the people who they're robbing, but they're just guys. Now, very talented at what they do, but just guys. And, of course, they have to drop in the Locke's past that he might be somebody who's important, and that was also really, really disappointing. And the pacing just drags along as these new plot threads are thrown at the wall, and it just doesn't have that engaging tone of the first book, of the first two books anyway. It almost feels like a different book at points. It was really disappointing reading through, and also the political maneuvering was not really that interesting. I just wasn't compelled in what was going on. Again, Lynch completely torpedoed the tension that was built from the previous book, and this book was basically, how the hell is John and Locke going to get out of a situation that looks like they cannot get out of? Then it just turns into a cat and mouse chase, and not a particularly engaging or interesting one. And it was disappointing. It really sucked. And I won't pretend this wasn't a complete dumpster fire. It was just massively disappointing reading through the, it's just massively disappointing reading through this book and just going through all this stuff that I really didn't care about. I want to see Locke and John robbing things, and tricking people. And, I read these because I want to see basically a fantasy crime epic. And we don't get a freaking fantasy crime epic. We get a weird political maneuvering love story. And not all of it is bad, but the maneuvering isn't that interesting. I don't know what Lynch was thinking when he wrote this. I know his heart wasn't in it. You could tell that his heart was not fully into this when he was writing this book. I am sorry, but now that is not an excuse for bad writing, and I'm not trying to excuse him here. But just, you could tell the drop of quality after you read this book. You're just like, my God, just some of the choices he makes just are dragging this book down and is not making it a very compelling read. Now, like I said, this book is not a complete dumpster fire. There is still some quality. There is some quality to be found. I did actually like the romance. A lot of people, I was expecting this to not be as good as the first two. And while I definitely got that, a lot of people complained about the romance in this book. I actually liked the romance. I thought it was pretty well done. I think that Locke and Sabetha are really interesting together, and Lynch really captures what it's like to fall in love for the first time in a really compelling way. I really liked the beginning of the book, because it explores that a little bit. We learn a little bit more about Locke's past, per se. And the sort of will they, won't they dynamic is not as annoying as it is in, like, a YA story where it just feels kind of contrived and for just to appeal to as many people as possible. It's actually well done. You can it's probably because I got invested in Locke's struggles in the first 2 books, but let me back up. So, like I said, I don't mind the romance in this book. I actually thought it was pretty good. The will they, won't they is actually pretty good. It's not quite as frustrating as some of the other romances I've read in fantasy. And I know that fantasy fans are a bit averse to romance. I mean, I don't mind romance. I think romance can be really well done, can really touch the heart when it's done well. I just think a lot of the time, romance isn't done well in a lot of the books that I've read. But the romance in this is actually not bad. There's this kind of playfulness to it. I really enjoyed how Lynch, you really feel the history between Locke and Sabetha, which I also enjoy a lot. I also really enjoyed the flashback sequences. I really enjoyed the Shakespeare play XB. If you know what XB is, you know. And they really captured the feel of Shakespearean theater. I mean, hell, you could have made a whole story out of that, really, if you really wanted to. I think the flashback story is actually far more compelling than the political maneuvering in the present. But, you know, I digress. It was also interesting seeing the history and culture of the Bonds Magi. If you don't know who they are, that's explained in the first book, and we end up getting a more, we get a better look into who they are in this book because we're introduced to more of the Bonds Magi characters, and not just the odious Falconer, who, by the way, also makes an appearance in this book. So, you know, mild spoilers there. But again, I found that the good parts of this book were really dragged down by the bad parts. I mean, in all honesty, the flashback story actually felt like a proper Locke and John adventure, not this dumb political maneuvering plot that we got. And while it's interesting on paper to see Locke go up against Sabetha, again, it's just not that interesting. A lot of it is, there are some funny moments in there for sure. There's one moment where there's a bunch of old ladies spying on them because she knows that John would never hurt an old lady. That was pretty good. There's also some good lines in here from time to time. Shows that Lynch still has that wit that made the first 2 books so good. Even the prose felt kind of off. You know, I didn't quite get those really lush sentences, those really colorful descriptions that I know Lynch for. Again, it just feels dragged down. Again, it just feels unfocused. It feels unfinished. Again, it's a really disappointing experience, the Republic of Thieves. Again, that Deus Ex Machina, if he hadn't have done that, if he had found some clever way around it, I mean, should I go into spoilers on this? Fuck it, we'll go into spoilers on this. I will talk about spoilers now. If you have not read this book, go read it, come back, then watch this. Or if you don't care about spoilers and just want to hear my thoughts, that's fine too. I really don't care. So, basically the hook of this book is that Locke and John got poisoned last book. They managed to solve that crisis, except Locke tricked John into drinking his antidote because the guy who had poisoned them, Stragos, only made 1 vial. Basically, the effects of the poison are really starting to screw with Locke, kill him. He's basically dying by this point, and John is desperately looking for a cure. And they get one in the appearance of a Bonds Magi lady named Patience, who we end up learning is actually the Falconer's mother. Which, God help her. Anyway, so she offers to heal Locke in exchange for her helping her with this political thing. They agree. They hesitate, of course, because of their previous experiences with the Bonds Magi. but they agree. Then, that's where we get to the part that really made me upset. She heals him. She heals Locke. No questions asked. It's not you would expect, considering the last two books we read, these, one of the things about this book, again, is Locke and John get themselves into something. They don't know how to get out of it, and they have to figure out how to get out of it using their wits. She just fixes it, and I was fucking baffled by this. I was completely baffled by this. I was wondering what Lynch was thinking. You have the perfect setup for another Locke and John adventure where we get to figure out, and we're grabbing, our balls are shriveled because of how much we want to know how they're going to get out of it, and you, again, pull this blatant Deus Ex Machina out on us. Again, just completely torpedoes the book. I mean, my God, talk about just bad writing. Oh, God, again, just such clumsy writing. Okay, I'm going on a little too far. But, yeah, basically just kills the momentum of the book. And I can see why a lot of people were really disappointed with this book. So, yeah, very much a comparably mixed bag, a very disappointing end to the trilogy so far, though Lynch has said he will come back with some new Locke and John adventures, and he has two bangers so far, and one that's just completely gone off that not completely torpedoed my interest in this series, but it was a disappointment. But yeah, Republic of Thieves is a book that really frustrated me, and there's not really much else for me to say aside from that. Hope you guys enjoyed this little review, rant, video that I just made here. Don't mind the cat. If you guys want to check out my channel, you can check me out on Twitter. You can check me out on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. And you can find me on Discord if you want to come talk to me, because I love hearing from you guys. Comment down below if you've read this book, if you share some of my frustrations with this book. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear from you guys. Maybe if you guys actually like this, explain why that decision was, for some reason, a good idea. I think it was a really stupid one. But, yeah. So, that's my review for the Republic of Thieves. I hope Scott Lynch comes back at some point. Again, I'm not completely torn away from this series. And, yeah, it's not really much else for me to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Goodbye.